respect to their video, I'll explain everything that's going on in like 5 seconds. Okay, so I have a hat on because not having a good hair day, and I'd rather just keep the hat on because, I mean, no wispies today, like we live for that. That is supposed to be a Halloween decoration. Halloween, spooky season, there you go. I usually can't fit Halloween decorations in, so I was like, if it's there, it's there. Like there's more up there, but you just can't see it, it's fine, whatever. Today, oh no, it's not there. Oh, today we're gonna be reading a creepypasta. Third video in my creepypasta series for this year. If you have not seen the other 2 videos, I would definitely go watch them. They have nothing to do with these videos besides the fact that they are creepypastas, so you don't have to watch them, but I would just suggest it if you want more creepypasta content. Also, I did this last year, but this year I've been doing 1 creepypasta per video. Last year I did 2 creepypastas and spread it out over a while, so it's like 8 videos, I think? I don't remember. Also, can I just mention that I've been doing really good with filming these videos? Like, the first one came out yesterday, and I'm filming the 3rd one already. I'm so proud of myself. Like, I've never done this good on a series. Okay, so, the one I picked, I actually decided not to do. Oh, is this by the same... Oh, it's by Richard Saxon again. From last time, or from the time before, so that's good. We'll read his. The one I picked before, though, I actually skimmed through it, and I was like, oh, no, actually, I'm good. So, yeah, we're gonna read this one. It's called Decay. It came out on the 6th of this month, actually, so... It has to do with a pandemic. Great. Whatever. Let's just read it. It's got a 7-minute estimated reading time. There are other ones that intrigued me, but it was like 25 minutes, and girl, I don't have time for that. Okay.
Just a quick warning, these could have mentions of self-harm, gore, or anything else you may not feel comfortable with. I'm reading these live, so I have no clue. Just putting it out there, hope you enjoy.
Am I going to die? The kid asked me as he was being rolled into the operating theater. It was a question I'd heard 1,000 times before, but answering it truthfully hadn't become any easier, even after years at the hospital. Of course not. We're gonna fix you right up. I lied. He'd been crushed in a horrific car accident, and that we could put all our effort into saving his life. Hope was a limited resource. The fact that he even remained conscious despite losing most of his blood was bizarre enough. But after 10 years on the job, nothing surprised me anymore. The anesthesiologist how'd I say quickly wrong and anesthesiologist right? The anesthesiologist quickly put him under while we scrubbed in for surgery. Damien would be the surgeon, a specialist in polytrauma cases, and I'd assist. No sooner had we opened him up and shared a look of disappointment. There was no chance in hell he'd survive the surgery. Despite our lack of faith, we tried our best, but only after an hour and a half on the table, his heart gave out. How was he still alive when he arrived? Damien asked. He pronounced the time of death and left us to clean up the mess. I took the responsibility of cleaning the kid up for the morgue, a task I'd committed countless times before. It wasn't something I personally enjoyed, but to me it was my final choice to pay respect to the dead. The kid couldn't have been more than 15, and as I'd heard, he'd just learned to drive. Unexperienced and attempting his first drive on a slippery road, he managed to steer off into a ditch. His father died on impact, but he lived long enough to face surgery. As I put in the needle to open his abdomen, his body twitched for a moment. I retracted the needle in surprise, wondering what had caused the post-mortem spasm. The boy suddenly gasped for air as his eyes shut open. I think that's supposed to say shot open, but it says shut open. He let out the most violent scream imaginable, and he suddenly returned to life. I don't know what voice I'm giving right now, but I mean, my voice changes all the time, so what can you expect? Help me! No, I can do this better. I can do this better. Help me! I can't, apparently. He begged with a guttural voice as he stumbled back in panic and slipped onto the floor. I called for help as the rest of the team came running into the operating theater. Each panicked as they witnessed the dead body scream on the operating table. I like the voice I gave last time more. This one just sounds like I'm dead. His spine was in fractures, so though he yelled in agony, he could do nothing to move. The anesthesiologist quickly attempted to sedate him while we checked his vitals. Despite all evidence pointing to the contrary, his heart had not started beating again. He was supposed to be dead. I started chest compressions, desperately trying to get his heart going. I cringed to the sound of his ribs cracking beneath my hands, and the boy's screams turned to gargles as he was unable to gasp for another breath. "He's not going under," the anesthesiologist yelled as he gave the kid a second dose of whatever drug that is. propofol, I think? I'm not sure. Of course, without a functioning heart, there'd be no way for a drug to flow through his veins, even as I tried my best to pump for him. After an hour of compressions, the chief of surgery had intervened and ordered us to stop. At that point, we caused more damage than we had helped. What's happening to me? The kid stuttered, still conscious. None of us responded. We couldn't find any words to describe the horrific sight before us. Most of the staff had left due to the sight. We'd faced many challenges in our career, but nothing quite like this. What's your name? I asked, despite already seeing it on the file. I just wanted him to focus. Brian Dawson, he replied. I took a deep breath, doing my best to keep my composure. You were in an accident, Brian, I told him. His eyes darted frantically around the room as he started to realize what had happened. He started to lift his neck, but due to the spinal fractures, he was completely paralyzed. I can't move. I can't move, he cried. I walked closer, standing directly above him. Brian, your heart isn't beating, I said. The chief of surgery, George, grabbed me by the shoulder and whispered in my ear. We need to isolate or whatever happening here is beyond us. And it could be contagious, George said. He rushed into the preparation room and picked up the phone. Through the glass, I couldn't hear what he said, but I assumed he was calling security to shut down the ward. What about my father? Brian asked, trying to hold back tears. I was taken aback by the question. I had just told him his heart was destroyed and that he was essentially dead, yet his first concern was regarding his father. I'm so sorry I can't speak right now. I'm sorry, Brian. He died on impact. He sobbed quietly. So, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to die, aren't I? He said. I didn't know what to say. I've never been in a similar situation, so I just gave the only answer I thought might be of some comfort. You're not alone. I'm staying here until the end. George had been quick to shut down the operating theater, and the Center of Disease Control had long since been alerted to our situation. We had nothing to do but wait and prayed to any god that Brian wasn't contagious. I had still been exposed, so I examined Brian, checking for any chances of improving his situation. Can you feel this? I asked as I checked all his limbs. Not a thing, he responded, but it hurts so much on the inside. Where exactly does it hurt? I asked. Everywhere. Please do something, he begged. I asked Brian for a dose of fentanyl. That's what that is. Yep, right? Yep, probably. But without a heartbeat to move the drug around, I had little hope that it would take any effect at all. To keep him distracted from the pain, I asked mundane things about his life, what his hobbies were, family stuff. He was smart enough to realize my intentions, but went along with it, either out of fear or because he had actually hoped someone could save him. Hours passed while we waited for someone to tell us what to do. Half the surgical staff had been put into quarantine, terrified that they might be infected. Finally, the CDC arrived on the scene, fully geared in hazmat suits. They allowed us to roll Brian into his own space. A pre-operating room had been evacuated, so we can stay somewhat comfortable. The rest of us were put into a surgical office while the situation was being assessed. I decided to stay with Brian. No one else should have to suffer alone, especially with the CDC agents probing him with all sorts of needles, enthusiastically taking samples. The only reason they allowed me to stay was because I kept him relatively calm. Calm! The only reason they allowed me to stay was because I kept him The only reason they allowed me to stay was because I kept him relatively calm. We talked through the night. After the procedure was finished, I couldn't sleep, and I doubted Brian was physically capable of it. My eyes feel a bit weird, he said. Do they hurt? No, the edges are kind of blurry. It's weird. I left to talk to George, who was still working around the clock, calling around, making sure no other patients were redirected elsewhere. What if we put the kid on a heart-lung machine? I asked. George put the phone down for a moment and sighed. Then what? He has no functioning liver, his aorta is cut into pieces, and his intestines are shredded. Even if we got him a new heart, he'd never survive, George responded. Just keep him company while you can. I knew he was right, but some of my professional knowledge was put aside due to the insane nature of the situation. Doctor! Brian shouted. I rushed to his side. I can't see, he stuttered. I put on a flashlight and examined his eyes. Both pupils were unresponsive, and his eyes had started to almost deflate, which was one of the stages of decomposition. Brian had started to rot. Please, I'm so scared. Brian was a brave kid, but he was starting to lose his composure just like everyone else had in the ward. I kept talking to him, but his inevitable truth was that he kept decomposing. He'd start losing all of his senses, all while still being conscious to experience it. As horrible as it might sound, I begged that it might finally allow him to pass on. We kept talking. I asked if there was anyone he wanted to call, but as I already knew from the others, Brian's mother had died during childbirth, and his father had been in the same accident as himself. As we talked, Brian's voice kept getting louder as if he was struggling to hear. Are you hearing me all right? I asked. What did you say? Brian basically yelled. His hearing had deteriorated within minutes. Sorry, I'm starting to stutter now because I'm talking faster. Going from impaired to deafness, before I could even begin to help. With him being blind and deaf, we were no longer had a way of communicating. No matter my attempts, I couldn't comfort the dying kid, and the CDC quickly decided that my presence had become unnecessary. Brian kept screaming in terror and agony after I left. For each passing second, his own body started digesting itself, and nothing we could do to take the pain away. By the morning, his screams had silenced. I barged into the room, much to my dismay of the agents. Brian was hooked up to hundreds of cables, monitoring his heart, brain, muscles, and vital values. Of course, his heart showed no activity, and the decay had progressed to shut down all his muscles. He had quieted down not because all the pain was gone, but because he wasn't able to scream anymore. The only part of his body that was still working was his brain. What the hell happened? I asked. Get him out of here, one of the men demanded. The other man complied, but went outside with me to explain the situation. You don't have to worry about it being contagious. We'll lift the quarantine in a moment, he said. He looked oddly somber as he spoke these words. What about Brian? What will happen to him? He's still conscious, but has no respiratory function anymore, so we have no means of communicating. Brian was still alive, blind, deaf, and dumb to all the suffering and loneliness, unable to die. How long does he have to suffer? I asked. We'll know more when we find out in our specialized facility. The senior CDC agent demanded that his colleague kept quiet before they could tell me anything else. They left with Brian, covered him in an airtight capsule so no one could see the horrors that had just occurred within our surgical ward. As soon as the quarantine was lifted, I headed home to write my letter of resignation. I had a well-connected contact with the CDC, but upon trying to get more information, he claimed no case had ever been presented to them. No one had ever been admitted to their facility under the name Brian Dawson. About a month later, a lawyer accompanied by a doctor showed up to my door with a bunch of documents, all regarding doctor-patient confidentiality. The lawyer looked tired, worked down to the bone, as if he'd had many such trips before. He asked me to sign the documents and never to speak of this again, saying I'd lose my medical license if I did. Not that it mattered to me. I'd been done in that field for good. I was given an injection by the doctor. He told me that Brian's disease was not unfamiliar to them, and that it was extremely contagious, but only upon death. He explained that half the population is infected with the disease that keeps the brain conscious for hours, even days following death. Brian's case was special in the sense that he's actually regained some motor function and was able to speak to us. The injection given was not a cure. It'll only prevent me from spreading the disease. But once I die, I'll suffer a similar fate to Brian. I just hope someone will stay with me when that happens. Okay. So we're done. Oh, that one's kind of sad. And I mean, it has to deal with quarantine stuff too. So it's like, Well, hope you guys enjoyed. I'm not sure how many more of these I'll do. This one will probably come out, well, it'll come out after the 14th, so 1 or 2 more maybe, I'm not sure, and then we'll have maybe a Mischief Night vlog, and then definitely a Halloween vlog, but hope you guys enjoyed. Like, the bell. See you in the next one. Bye!